Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge. This Saturday I have just a few things I want to talk about. One has to do with, how we define great writers. What do we mean? I mean, people say it on BookTube all the time. I say it on BookTube all the time. Hello, Zelda. Talk about, oh, this person is a great writer. And what do we mean by that? And I have to tell you that I assume what we mean by that is somewhat unique to us and what appeals to us in books. We see those things on BookTube all the time. Are you a plot-driven reader? Are you a character-driven reader? Are you a theme-driven reader? Do you just appreciate the writing, the art of writing itself? I think my answers have varied from time to time, but generally speaking, what I would say that I mean when I talk about a great writer is someone who can actually use words on the page, the language on the page, the word choices, the rhythm of the sentences in ways which are just incredibly evocative, which create that sense of knowing, of understanding, call to mind similar situations in which you may have been in or people that you may have known. And that the greatest writers are those who can do this over and over again, or those who consistently do that kind of thing. It's not that in my opinion, there are lots of writers who are capable of great writing, who pull off great writing in their works. But to me, the greatest writers, in what I define as great writers, are the writers who can do that over and over again, who are consistent, who use that ability to write not just to create the image of what's going on, the place where things are happening, but also to create character. So I thought I would share with you just two passages really quickly of things that I thought were great writing, and then kind of talk about perhaps the difference in how I see these two writers and why. So the first passage I want to read is from Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. I read this book this week, and in my last Saturday Hodgepodge I mentioned how much I liked it and how powerful it was. I have to tell you, it's a very unsettling, uncomfortable, raw, there are not a lot of places of comfort for the reader in this book, just as there are not very many places of comfort for the characters in this book. But I thought Ward did a great job of describing the world in which the characters in this book live. It's a unique geographical place, but it does call to mind a lot of things we would find in the writing of Southern fiction and description of landscape and things like that. It jogged my memory of time I spent, in places that were similar. The book is set in Louisiana, right on the edge of Hurricane Katrina hitting this area, and the devastation will bring about. So that's kind of where the book is. I will mention, I'm going to read this passage. The passage refers to Jose. Jose was a hurricane, tropical storm out in the Gulf that preceded Katrina. And also the name China here is used. China is the name of a pit bull that our main character's brother is raising. So I just want to read you this because I thought it was really beautiful and a great example of great writing. Away from the pit, the pine trees reach skyward. Their green needled tops stand perfectly still. Once in a while they shiver in the breeze that moves across their tops. They seem to nod to something that I cannot hear, and I wonder if it is the hum of Jose out in the Gulf, singing to himself. The breeze doesn't touch us down here. Down here the air is thick and hot. The trees are so dense that there's only a little undergrowth, and the brushes fight for their bright spots on the hard-packed, shadowy earth. There are birds, like yesterday, but these are small and brown, so small they could fit in the middle of my hand or in the maw of China's mouth. They are following us. As we walk through the wood on an unseen trail, the tiny birds fly from tree to tree, chattering sharply with each other, keeping pace with us. In the dense air, the oaks stand apart from their piney clusters, solemn, immovable. Spanish moss hangs from their arms, gray as an old king's beard. I just thought that was an example of truly beautiful writing, not just in the word choices, but in the way in which the rhythm of the sentences change, speed up, fall back, crush together, short sentences, long sentences. To me, that's an example of great writing, and I think there's lots of it here. Now, I haven't read enough of Jesmyn Ward's work to know if I would consider her to be a great writer on that level. I will say, in Salvage the Bones, I don't see her great writing coming into play in terms of the way in which characters are created. That when she talks about characters, I think her writing loses a little bit of the beauty. And maybe it's because of the style of book she's writing and the characters she's writing about that happens. But you all may also know I did a video on Thursday about where not to start with William Trevor, one of my absolute favorite writers and someone who I think has proved over an incredibly long career that he was in fact a great writer, capable of great writing consistently. And the book I read this week that was by William Trevor is The Silence in the Garden. This is one of his earlier novels, maybe among his first 5 or 6. And I'd read The Boarding House, which actually he wrote before this, and I didn't like it as much. This book I thought was great. Matter of fact, I almost put it in the video about where to start with William Trevor. One of my commenters named Ian thinks this is a great book, and I agree. But there are a couple of places here where I think Trevor really does a great job, where you can really see Trevor's greatness as a writer. So I just want to read you those again to give you some idea of what I consider to be great writing. And this one will be similar to what I read from Jesmyn Ward, and I chose these two on purpose because they kind of show different approaches to describing a physical landscape, but there are real similarities here. We crossed the cobbled yard, Valana leading me to an ice house and then through a shrubbery to the kitchen garden where peaches ripened on brick-lined walls. We passed among apple trees to a secluded tennis court and continued on a path that skirted the grounds, eventually arriving at the inlet where the island's river flowed into the sea. Rhododendrons were clumped along the riverbank. A path led to a pebbled shore where a boathouse and the landing stage referred to by Haverty were, both of them disused. In gathering twilight, we reached the ruined abbey at the heart of the island and then climbed up to the standing stones that marked a burial ground on the hill above it. Later, we stood on the edge of black rock cliffs where there was a view of only sea and sky, darkness claiming both before we turned away. I just think that's beautiful, and if you read William Trevor, you will find passages of kind of landscape and the physical places described like that over and over again. But one of the things I really think clearly makes Trevor a great writer is his ability to use this kind of, his use of language and sentences and the subtlety of language and the subtlety of the things he chooses to include and to leave out to also create characters. So this is a passage about a character named Fenimore Balt who is engaged to Valana, one of the characters from the passage I read before. So here we go. Fenimore Balt wondered about the fate of his cat and his maid. The cat, resembling a white fluff ball, had become so used to sitting on the wide windowsill of the hallway between the lace curtains and the window panes that the deprivation of this simple pleasure seemed a cruelty. There was a certain haughtiness about the animal, disdain in the green eyes that observed the citizens of the town and the summer visitors passing to and fro all day long, yet it led a quiet life and did not deserve arbitrary punishment. "I'm really awfully sorry," Valana had explained, "but I cannot have a cat about me." Fenimore's maid, a raw-boned woman who had been his parents' maid in their lifetime, was apparently not welcome at Carriglass either. "I think," he had replied with carefully judged energy as they stood waiting for the ferry the evening before, "that it is just a little unreasonable." But Valana, smiling and slightly shaking her head, had been reluctant to pursue the conversation. So in that passage, you get so much information about this character, Fenimore Balt. You get the idea of the tradition of his family, and you get the impression that he doesn't like change. You get the impression this change is coming with his marriage to Valana, and you get right there at the end, a great insight into their relationship. That Fenimore Balt can only feel like he has to only very carefully object to things that Valana is changing for him, like he can't bring his maid to the home they're going to live in, which is her family home. And she just dismisses him with a little shake of his head, something that he feels very deeply. And that power structure is really contained there. So, I'm not sure if this made sense, but it's something I wanted to talk about and kind of ask you. To you, what makes a great writer? Is it the writing itself? Is it the ability to create, innovative, clever plots? Is it their ability to pack their prose with ideas and illusion and wordplay? Is it their ability to create characters that you recognize? Is it some combination of all of those? You know, is there one you put above the other? And I would say that I think from these examples, what I have a tendency to think of as a great writer is someone who can actually, the writing on the page actually has a beauty, a power to it that goes beyond the plot, that goes beyond maybe the characters, maybe even goes beyond the setting, that there is something just about their use of language that makes them a great writer. That doesn't mean the writers that I've mentioned here don't put together compelling plots and interesting characters. In both cases, they certainly do, and they both tell really great stories. But it's that writing itself which oftentimes I find makes me think of someone as a great writer. So obviously, one of the books I read this week was *The Silence of the Garden* by William Trevor, and I really liked it. And you know, I've kind of hit a slowdown in my writing. I've reached a slowdown in my reading. Did I say writing before? Slowdown in my reading this week, which happens to be a lot near the end of the month. I seem to just get kind of bogged down. Anyway, but the other book I've been reading this week is James Kelman's *How Late It Was, How Late*. This won the Booker Prize, I don't know, sometimes back in the 90s. And I bought it back then, and I don't know if you picked up on this, I don't know if I've said it. In January, I've been reading a lot of books that I've had on my shelves for quite some time. And this is one of those books. And I've always meant to read it. As a matter of fact, I did a video not that long ago which I read a little bit of it and tried to decide if it was a book I wanted to read, and it certainly is a book I wanted to keep and read. And I'm glad I did, because this has been a really great, interesting, fun, disturbing, distressing, kind of niggling at my brain reading experience. It basically, and I will hopefully, I'll be finished with this by the time I do my wrap up for January. I'll talk more about it then. But it basically involves a character named Sammy, and sometimes it's stream of consciousness, we're in Sammy's mind, and sometimes we are having what's happening to Sammy described to us. It's written mainly in dialogue, whether it's an internal monologue for Sammy or it's dialogue between Sammy and other characters. And Sammy is definitely a down on his luck character who may or may not be to blame for the situation that he finds himself in, which are incredibly intricate and difficult. And I feel tremendously for Sammy, but I'm also, there's kind of a mystery at the heart of the novel, not like a murder mystery or something like that, but kind of a mystery at the heart of the novel I'm interested to get to. And I will finish this up and talk to you more about that when I do my January wrap-up, which should be Tuesday of next week. So let me see, what else did I want to talk about this week? So I didn't watch any movies this week, I don't think, but my wife and I have been watching Ted Lasso. At the suggestion of my daughter, we've been watching Ted Lasso, and we just finished season 2, and I think there are only two seasons out there. We just finished season 2 last night, and I have to tell you that I had really resisted the idea of Ted Lasso. If you don't know, it's a TV show about an American football coach who gets hired to come coach an English football team, an English Premier League football team, and he knows nothing about football. He knows nothing about European football, or I should probably say world football. And so he's kind of a fish out of water story, and it just seems, when I first thought of it, it just seems stupid and silly, and it is those things, but it's also incredibly clever and intelligent and oftentimes incredibly moving, and it really is a lot more about human relationships than it is about this fish out of water story. But it's just really good. If you have Apple TV, I would highly suggest you watch Ted Lasso. This week also, I believe Tuesday was Burns Night in Scotland, where they celebrate the poet of Scotland, Robbie Burns, is celebrated by reading his poetry, and I believe it's his birthday. Anyway, MJ from the channel Reading This Life did a little video about Burns Night on her channel. I'll leave a link to it below. And in that channel, she mentioned that one of her brothers, uncles, somebody had done research and found out that that her family is related to the family of Robert the Bruce, the first king of Scotland, the king who won Scotland's independence, despite what Braveheart makes him look like. That her family was in some way descended or connected to Robert the Bruce's family, and my last name is Bruce, and I know my ancestors came to the United States from Scotland in the 1740s. And there's, one of the things about having my last name is that there's a whole there used to be a whole Bruce kind of genealogy site, which there's a Y-DNA project, and you could find. I found one of my ancestors' name in the Y-DNA lineages, and anyway, so I know that I'm descended from the family of Bruces who lived in Scotland, and Bruce is not a Scottish name It's a Norman name, and the Bruces came over at some point after William the Conqueror conquered Great Britain, were given lands in Scotland, and then my family descended somehow from that group of Bruces. And in that video, my comment to her was, well, we must be related then, because I'm descended from the Bruces from Scotland as well. And I mentioned I would wear my kilt in my next video. I couldn't find all the things that go with the kilt, so instead of wearing my kilt, I'm just going to leave a picture of myself and my wife in kilt over here, which you may have seen if you saw our video about the Texas Renaissance Festival. Every year the Texas Renaissance Festival is held near the area where I live around Houston. They do, one of the weekends they do is called Highland Fling. My wife and I like to go to that one. I wear my kilt, which by the way is my Bruce family in the Bruce family tartan. And so this is a picture from that. So while I'm not actually wearing my kilt in the video, there is a picture of me in my kilt in the video. Anyway, there you go. There's my hodgepodge for this week. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below on this rambling, weird, probably not too coherent hodgepodge. Anyway, look forward to your comments in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.